Another looter shooter? Between the Division 2, Anthem, Destiny, and the juggernaut that is Borderlands, that's an increasingly constricted space. However, People Can Fly of Bulletstorm fame are set to release Outriders in just a couple of months to compete in that exact same space. The Unreal 4-powered sci-fi romp might not be doing too much from a gameplay perspective. It is interesting, however, as one of the first looter shooters built to scale with next-gen consoles in mind. So how does Outriders stack up visually? Does it leverage the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X's capable GPU and CPU setups? Or are we looking at an enhanced 8th-gen port, essentially? Well, let's dive in and find out. A quick note before we move forward. Please consider subscribing and enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon to get new video updates. And while you're at it, please click like if you enjoyed this video. It really helps us out. With that out of the way, let's begin. Engine overview. At this point of time, Unreal 4 is familiar, well-trotted territory. While it hasn't seen the kind of third-party licensing success as Unreal 3, this is an engine of choice for AA efforts from studios like People Can Fly. You have an accomplished deferred rendering setup in place, allowing for a large number of dynamic light sources at a time. Both DirectX 12 and DirectX 11 code paths exist. What's interesting that it's the same core technology that Borderlands 3 is built on, so it'll be interesting to see what direction People Can Fly take things compared to Gearbox. People Can Fly have outlined a positively massive amount of gameplay content for Outriders over the past couple of months. This is great since it offers a solid basis for analysis. Based on what we've seen so far, however, People Can Fly hasn't exactly pushed the envelope. When the initial trailer was outed last May, some outlets described the game as appearing like something that, quote, came out of 2008. While the brownish palette and sci-fi militarism are a nice throwback, many of People Can Fly's technical decisions seem retrograde too, which is much less of a good thing. All in all, this is much more of a cross-gen title than we expected, and arguably, even if it had released exclusively on 8th gen a year ago, Outriders wouldn't exactly have won any awards for its visuals. So, what does it get right, and what could have been improved? Let's take a look. Lighting and shadow rendering. Gameplay scenes in Outriders feel strangely flat. It's hard to put your finger on exactly what's wrong until focusing more closely on the game's lighting setup. Between lightmass global illumination and a scalable deferred rendering solution that allows for a large number of shadow casting light sources on scene at once without too much of a performance hit, Unreal 4 has the potential to deliver great lighting. Unfortunately, Outriders isn't exactly a shining example of this. In interior scenes, such as caves, we saw a disappointingly limited number of shadow casting lights. While skylighting from the sun cast player and NPC shadows in exteriors, interior details like an animal carcass hanging over a fire don't seem to cast dynamic shadows. This is puzzling since this is something old games managed to do. Presumably, this is a performance-oriented optimization to ensure that the game runs at a steady 60 FPS clip across all next-gen platforms. But as a result of this, there are plenty of areas in the game that, at first inspection, would not hold up even in a standard 8th-gen title. We do see a reasonable number of dynamic light sources, albeit not shadow casting ones, including muzzle flash and explosions. Puzzlingly, even certain explosion effects used unlit particles, resulting in some very flat-looking scenes. Ray tracing? Nope. Outriders will not feature ray tracing. Considering its relatively less ambitious asset quality, ray trace reflections and shadowing could have been implemented without too much of a performance hit. After all, this is a game where the recommended GPU for 1080p 60 FPS is the GeForce GTX 1060. There is definitely enough performance headroom for RTX cards to run ray tracing effects and even to make that an option on the console outings. While ray tracing is absent, People Can Fly have opted to include NVIDIA's DLSS 2.0 technology. This is a fantastic addition and could potentially make 4K 144Hz gaming a possibility on cards like the GeForce RTX 3080 and GeForce RTX 3090. DLSS 2.0 reconstructs the frame, leveraging deep learning, and in cases like Control, the results are nothing short of phenomenal. Near native or better than native image quality with a massive boost to performance. Since Outriders doesn't feature RTX effects, baseline performance is expected to be high, and DLSS will only push things further. Asset quality and material rendering. We'd say Outriders features decent character and environmental models if it were an 8th gen exclusive title. As it stands, however, asset quality is disappointing. People Can Fly make use of relatively low polygon character models during gameplay. While substantially higher quality assets do make their appearances in cutscenes, much of the time the game brings to mind earlier Gears of War titles, and not necessarily in a good way. Material rendering is par for the course, with a physically based material rendering pipeline. Certain assets like rocks and exterior surfaces look good enough. However, material quality really isn't where it ought to be, even in cutscenes. Post-processing effects. Outriders makes full use of Unreal 4's post-process suite, and in this area at least, the visual takeaway is decent. We see a high sample count motion blur implementation, both per object and for the camera. Screen space reflections are in place, fleshing out puddles and other highly reflective surfaces. We were also pleasantly surprised by the ambient occlusion quality. Outriders is a bit heavy-handed with AO, but AO adds considerably to scenes that would otherwise be flat due to the lack of dynamic shadowing. Bokeh depth of field is also in play, though it's considerably more noticeable in cutscenes. Conclusion. Outriders isn't going to win any awards for its visuals. It wouldn't exactly have impressed even if it came out in 2016. But while the visuals are a disappointment, gameplay looks to be Outriders' strong suit, with Gears of War style snap and cover and more than a little Bulletstorm DNA into the mix. Even if the graphics do not impress, we expect performance to be Outriders' real savior. The game's minimum specs indicate that even the ancient GeForce GTX 750 Ti will be able to deliver a 60 FPS experience. The minimum specs are actually a shade lower than Mass Effect Legendary Edition, remarkably considering that the latter is a 7th gen remaster. Whether or not it looks good in the process, Outriders looks set to be one of the most performance-friendly titles we've seen in a while. And that brings us to the end of the video. A quick request before we conclude. We upload new videos every single day, and if you like what we're doing, please consider subscribing. It really helps us out. Also, don't forget to enable all notifications by clicking the bell icon so that you can receive daily video updates. Thanks for watching.